What's up, guys? SAG here. Welcome to another video here in college football spread talk. It's a new week. It's week 6. We're almost halfway through the season. And let's take a look at last week and what was an absolutely fantastic week for us when it came to our money picks. Our average picks were just average and our avoid picks were average too. But looking at the money picks, we finally got right and got to a winning record in the money picks. We went 6-1. Boise State, San Diego State went over to 39 easily, and Boise State won and covered the game, guys. And that was a college fun game to me. Kentucky ended up covering the 7. Utah ended up getting the big win. Northwestern got the cover. Oklahoma State +3, and LSU was our only loss. Those picks would have been posted on my Instagram. I wasn't doing videos last week. In our average picks, we went 3-4. Washington did not cover their game. UCLA won that. Illinois not only covered but won. Michigan won. Oklahoma just looked horrible. Iowa State lost. Arkansas lost. USC couldn't cover. In avoid picks, Michigan State +7.5 did not cover, and Wake Forest did cover their game. And then not only did they cover, they won the game against Florida State. Got a big week upcoming. I got a lot of matchups I'm going to preview. Probably going to go more quick fire with this. But let's just get the party started here with Michigan, who are 21.5-point favorites, going to take on Indiana in Indiana. And for Michigan Wolverines, they've won 5 of their last 6 games. J.J. McCarthy is completing 78.6% of his passes for 848 yards. He's been really good. Ronnie Bell and Roman Wilson have been balling. And defensively, Michigan is allowing 11.6 points per game. They came off a huge win last week against Iowa. For Indiana, they've lost 5 of their last 8 games, and they just haven't looked that good. Connor Bazelak is completing 52.8% of his passes for 8 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Cam Camper and DJ Matthews Jr. are their top receivers. And defensively, they're allowing 30.4 points per game. That's not that good. Cam Jones leads the team with 54 tackles. Michigan's 4-0 in their last 4 road games against the spread, and they're 14-5 in their last 19 games overall. Hoosiers are 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 home games. They haven't been really good covering the spread, guys. And in this game, I'm taking a money pick on Michigan. Michigan still really hasn't had that blowout win where they smack a team in the Big Ten on the road. This is their second road game, and they're going to improve a point here. You could say this is a look-ahead game. I don't view it this way. I think Indiana are just really bad. Indiana's trash. They got blown up by Cincinnati. It's going to be more of the same here against Michigan. J.J. McCarthy proved against Iowa that this offense is unstoppable because he is composed in the pocket. So they get that running game going. They get the passing game going. Indiana is a horrible team. They're lucky to get a win against Illinois, and they've been pretty lucky throughout the year. But in this game, it's Smack City. Guys, I'm going to pull it down to 21 from 21.5, but give me Michigan minus 21 as a money pick. Next up, we have Purdue taking on Maryland. Now, Purdue, they had a tough loss in the beginning of the year against Penn State. They blew out Indiana State, lost to Syracuse, and then got back to 500. And then against Minnesota, they got a huge win with Aiden O'Connell back. Now, on the Maryland side, they have 3 wins against Buffalo, Charlotte, and SMU before losing to Michigan. And then against Michigan State, they played pretty solid, won 27-13, as Tuilaya Tagovailoa had 314 yards in the score. Now, Michigan State, to me, is not that good of a team. This is a really close one to call, but I think Purdue's the right side in this game. I think their offense is just a bit better than Tuilaya Tagovailoa's offense. And it's going to be neck and neck. Both teams are going to score. An over would be a pretty decent play on this one. But I think Purdue just pulls out. I think it's a razor-tight game. I just like Purdue plus the points. I don't think Maryland's that big of a home advantage. And Aiden O'Connell had figured it out against Minnesota. And I think he figures it out here against Maryland, whose defense isn't the greatest. So in this game, I'm taking an average pick. I'm going to take Purdue. I really like Aiden O'Connell, what he's got going there. But let's not get this mistaken. Maryland's a really good team as well. Next up, we have TCU going to Lawrence, Kansas to take on the Kansas Jayhawks. Now, TCU, they opened up the year with a big win against Colorado, 38-13. They beat Tarleton State. and they beat SMU. In their last game against Oklahoma, they had a huge blowout win. Max Duggan had 302 yards and 3 scores, while Keandre Miller rushed 13 times for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now with Kansas, they kicked off the 2022 season with a blowout win over Tennessee Tech and a close overtime win against West Virginia. Now in Kansas, they're 5-0. They beat Duke and Houston, and then in the Iowa State game, it was neck and neck. But the Jayhawks didn't score after half, but they still pulled out the win, 14-11, in what was a close one. Jalen Daniels threw for 93 yards on 7 of 14 passing. He didn't do much this whole game. Kansas just got shut down straight up. Now, looking at this game, it's going to be interesting here. I have seen both sides of this game. I've seen so many people back and forth. Oh, TCU is going to beat up on Kansas. Kansas is going to have a letdown. It's on College game day. Oh, no, this is historic. Kansas is going to find a way to cover this game. And I almost don't know. But to me, I lean more towards the side of Kansas is a good team coached by a good coach, and they're going to find a way to cover this game. I think 7 points is a lot to give on a team that's 5-0, and Kansas is ranked for a reason. They're still a good team, and sometimes you have to find ways to win the hard way. But in this game, Kansas, at the least, I think they keep this game close against TCU. It's tough to bet against Kansas in this one. So I'm going to take an average pick. I'm going to take Kansas plus the 7. Sorry for the interruption. I'm just going to restart here. We have the 8th ranked. So for the next game, we have the 8th ranked Tennessee Volunteers going to LSU to take on the 25th ranked Tigers. Now Hendon Hooker's been playing pretty well. He's completed 71% of his passes. He has 8 touchdowns, no picks. Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman have been playing pretty well. And their ground game is averaging 193 yards per contest. They can run the ball. Defensively, they've been allowing 19 points per game. Aaron Beasley led them in tackles. They're a pretty solid team. Now, LSU, they won their last 5 home games. They beat Auburn in the last game. Jalen Daniels completing 67.9% of his passes. Playing pretty solid. Now, on the defensive side, they're allowing only 14.8 points per game. Jay Ward, he leads the LSU Tigers with 24 tackles. BJ Ojolari has 3.5 sacks, and Micah Bakersville has 1 interception. Now, the Volunteers are 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 conference games and 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 games in October. The Tigers, meanwhile, are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 home games and 1-5 in their last 6 in October. Now, looking at this one, this is a really tough game to call again. 2 really good teams going at it. But I lean towards the side of Tennessee here. I like Hendon Hooker, and I think he's the real deal. Tennessee have been missing a solid quarterback, and Hendon Hooker is that. They've had some solid away wins, including against Pittsburgh. Now, LSU's a really good team. They're going to keep this one close. But I think Tennessee prevails in the end. They pull up by 3 or more. I'm taking Tennessee minus 2.5, and I'm taking it as an average pick. Next up, we have the Auburn Tigers going to take on the 2nd-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia is minus 29.5. Now, that's a substantial number. Now, Auburn, they lost 21-17 to LSU last time out. Robbie Ashford hasn't been good this year. He has 709 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks. Tarek Gisby has a team-high 326 rushing yards with 4 TDs. And their defense is okay. They played pretty well against LSU. Now, Georgia, they had a close call against Missouri, only winning 26-22. They're undefeated on the year. Stetson Bennett, still, despite that Missouri game, has had a pretty solid season. They got Kendon Milton and Dejon Edwards at the run game. And, of course, they have none other than Brock Bowers, one of the best tight ends in the country. You could say the best tight end in the country. And defensively, they have Jamon Dumas-Johnson with the 24 tackles and a pair of sacks. Nolan Smith has sacks. Malaki Starks and Christopher Smith. What, am I in this game? My name's Christopher Smithies and Christopher Smith. Anyways, they each have a pair of interceptions. Now, Auburn, in their last 6 games, is 1-5 against the spread. Georgia is also 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 home games. And really for this game, this one was tough to call because a lot of money is coming down on Georgia. Because everyone expects a bounce back game. Everyone knows Auburn isn't that good, but we have to be realistic at the same time. 29 is a really high number against the SEC team. But I think since Georgia's at home, they came off a tough away loss. They know they need a get right game. This is the get right game. This is the blowout game, and they have the talent to do it. And I think they do it this time against Auburn. I'm taking Georgia minus 29 to win in the cover. They're gonna blow Auburn out the door. I don't think Auburn's gonna score because Georgia's defense is that good. And Stetson Bennett, he's gonna get 30 points or more. He's a baller. He can play. So I'm taking Georgia minus 29. They need to make a statement here. They need to make a statement to the college football committee, the playoff committee, after that tie one against Missouri, which took them off the number one spot in the AP poll. Next up, we have Texas Tech heading to Oklahoma State to take on the Cowboys. Oklahoma State is minus 9.5. Now, Texas Tech, they just came off a loss against Kansas, 37-28. In the game before, they had a big win against Texas. Now, Donovan Smith finished with 359 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And Xavier White was the top receiver with 120 yards. Now, over on the Oklahoma State side, their year began with a huge win against Central Michigan. They beat Arizona State and Arkansas Pine Bluff. And in a recent matchup, what I would say is their hardest matchup against Baylor, the Cowboys gave up 22 points in the third quarter, but they still won the game 36-25. Spencer Sanders had 181 yards and a touchdown and interception, while he also had 14 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown. And in this one, guys, I really like Oklahoma State in this spot. I think they're just that good of a team. Now, Texas Tech, they're going to come to play for this game, and I think we all know that. But I think Oklahoma State is just that talented, really. Spencer Sanders has something going on there that is pretty big, and they're chasing that playoff spot. They need to keep making statement win after statement win. 9.5 isn't that high of a number. Texas Tech just came off a tough loss against Kansas State. Now they got to travel against the Oklahoma State team that's pretty good. And Spencer Sanders is the real deal, guys. I'm taking Oklahoma State minus 9.5, making an average pick. Next up, we have Utah taking on UCLA. Now, Utah is minus 4. This could be one of the games of the week, in my opinion. I actually didn't throw in my pick here, so let me do that. Here we go. Oh, shoot. Yep. Ding, ding, ding. Now, UCLA just came off a pretty big win against Washington at the Rose Bowl, and they stay home for this game. Now, the Bruins, Dorian Thompson Robinson threw for 1,211 yards, 11 TDs and a pick. Zach Carnabet is pretty good. Jake Bobo's a solid receiver. And five Bruins have 100-plus receiving yards on the season. That's pretty solid. Now, Utah, they of course, they had that loss against Florida being the season, but they've been pretty solid. 4-0 since then, and last week they had a huge win, 42-16 against Oregon State. Cameron Rising has been throwing for 1,153 yards, 13 TDs, and 2 picks, while Tavion Thomas has been pretty solid running the ball. Now, looking at the stats, Utah is 4-0 in their last 4 against the spread. Not only have they been winning games, but they've been covering them. UCLA is 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 games against a team with a winning road record, and 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 conference games. They really show up when it comes to conference time, and this is a neck-and-neck matchup. This could decide who wins the Pac-12 or who's going to be in the Pac-12 championship. And really, in my opinion, guys, I think that Utah is just a better team. This is going to be neck-and-neck, but I think Utah with Cameron Rising and the experience at quarterback is going to get the job done. They've been looking forward to this matchup. It's been circled on their calendar ever since that Florida loss. They've been ready for this one. And guys, I'm taking Utah minus 4, but I'm just taking it as an average pick because I think this is going to be a good game, and I respect UCLA. Next up, we have Wisconsin, who are 10-point favorites taking on Northwestern. Now, Wisconsin has won 3 of their last 5 road games. They fired their coach, Paul Chryst. Usually you look for a response after that. Now, Mertz, he's been not too great. He has 8 TDs, 5 picks, 997 yards. Chimeri Dyke and Skylar Bell have been okay, 477 yards and 3 TDs. Now, the ground game is really solid. They've averaging 178 yards a contest, Brent, with Braylon Allen leading the way. Now, defensively, they've allowed 22 points per game. They were blown out by Ohio State and had a tough loss against Illinois. Now, Northwestern, they played a pretty solid game. They lost against Penn State, but they kept it close. Helinski's been all right in the season. Malik Washington and Evan Hall, they combined for 690 receiving yards. And Northwestern's ground game is averaging 119 yards per contest. They've been really good. Now, the Badgers are 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 conference games. Sorry, I lost track there. Why did it do that? Now, also, the Badgers are 1-6 in their last 7 meetings in Northwestern, and 1-4 ATS in their last 5. Now, the Wildcats are really known for they're like Robin Hood, right? They overachieve against good teams, but they underachieve against bad teams or decent teams. We saw this against Duke when we took Duke plus 10, and Duke outright won the game against Northwestern. Now here, I have to take Wisconsin in this game, even though they've been struggling. I think Northwestern's just a bad team. And finally, we're starting to see two different arrows, really, where Wisconsin, they come off a tough loss, so they're getting undervalued, and Northwestern, they come off a really good cover against a ranked Penn State team, only lost by 10. Now they're on the trajectory. They're getting overrated, and we're going to see these two things mesh. It reminds me of after Nebraska, when they got overrated. They were 10-point favorites against Duke. This time, they're 10-point underdogs against a Wisconsin team that's just really good. Wisconsin is better than Duke. Even though Wisconsin had that tough loss, they're still a good team. They just fired their head coach. Look for them to respond in this game because this Northwestern team is not that talented. Guys, it's a money pick here. I'm taking Wisconsin minus 9.5. Take the number off. Just dock a half a point. Take them at 9.5 as a money pick, guys. This is a big game for Wisconsin. This is a response game after 2 straight losses, and they're going to dominate in this one. Next up, we have Ole Miss, who are 18.5 points favorites, 18.5 point favorites, going to take on Vanderbilt, who have been not the greatest, to say the least. Vanderbilt is Vanderbilt. What can I say? Now, for Ole Miss, they're looking to stay unbeaten. They won 22-19 against Kentucky, but let's be real, they got outplayed by Kentucky, and they were at home. Jackson Dart has 5 TDs, a pair of interceptions, 910 yards. Quishon Judkins has been pretty solid with 6 touchdowns running the ball. Malik Heath has been really good receiving. He has 320 receiving yards and 3 TDs. Now, on the defensive end, Troy Brown is pretty solid. He has 38 tackles. Kari Coleman and Jared Ivey each have 2.5 sacks. Now, Vanderbilt, they're not looking the greatest. They got blown out by Alabama last time, 55-3. Now, A.J. Swan threw for 567 yards and 6 TDs. Mike Wright has 426 yards. While Mike Wright has thrown for 426 yards, 6 TDs, and interception. Now, Ramon Davis and Wright, they've been pretty solid. They've combined for 666 rushing yards this season, while Will Shepard has 26 grabs for 365 receiving yards and 7 TDs. Now, on the defensive end, they're okay. They're not the greatest, but Anfree Orji has 52 total tackles, and their Vanderbilt defense has 7 sacks on the season. Now, Ole Miss is 4-1 ATS in their last 5 after a loss, and 6-2 ATS on the road against a team with a winning home record. And in their last 7 conference games, they're under as cashed. Now, Vanderbilt is 7-20 in their last 27 home games against the spread, and 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 conference games. In this game, guys, I don't know which side to take. I think this number is a bit high, but I don't trust Vanderbilt at the same time. I think 18.5 is a lot for Ole Miss, but Vanderbilt could just be that bad. I think because Vanderbilt is at home, I have to respect it and just take them on an avoid pick, guys. I'm taking Vanderbilt plus 18.5 as an avoid pick. Next up, we have Ohio State, the Buckeyes, going to Michigan State. I'm actually going to be at this game to take on the Spartans. Now, the Buckeyes, they've been on a tear. They're going to look to remain unbeaten, and they're sitting at 5-0 after a 49-10 rout of Rutgers. Now, C.J. Stroud is throwing for 1,376 yards, 18 TDs and 2 picks. He's been amazing. Trayvon Henderson has 318 rushing yards and 3 scores. And Mika Ogba has been leading the team in receiving yards with 512. And Marvin Harrison Jr. has been really good. They have the talent, and hopefully Jackson Nugba comes back too. And defensively, they've been much better this year. Tommy Eichenberg has 42 total tackles. And Ohio State's whole defense has 10 sacks and 3 picks. They've been really good. Now, Michigan State, they're looking to snap a 3-game losing skid after a 27-13 loss to Maryland, and they're falling to 2-3 on the year. Payne Thorne, he has 1,121 yards, 8 TDs, and 6 picks. Jalen Berger is pretty good rushing the ball. He has 301 yards and 4 TDs. Keon Coleman is leading the receiving group with 308 yards, 25 grabs, and 3 TDs. And they haven't been the greatest this year offensively. It's been a bit of a setback. Now, defensively, they haven't been as bad. Jacoby Windman has a team high 5.5 sacks as part of MSU's 13 sacks as a team this season. Now, Ohio State is 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 against a team with a losing record, and 3-1-1 in their last 5 conference games, while the over in their last 5 road games is cashed. Now, Michigan State is 11-5-2 in their last 18 overall, and 7-1-2 in their last 10 home games, while the under is 4-0 in their last 4 home games. Guys, I'm taking Ohio State as an average pick. I just think the number is really high, 25.5, but they're going to be out for blood. They're going to dominate against Michigan State. This team has been on a tear. Ryan Day was something to prove ever since that Michigan lost Thanksgiving, and I think Ohio State's going to show it here. I think they're just going to absolutely dominate this game. And Michigan State is not a good team. They're really bad. Their secondary has barely gotten any better, and their offense has fallen off, while Ohio State's defense has improved. Last time in Columbus, it was 49-10, and I see something similar here. I got Ohio State as an average pick, minus 25.5. Next up, we have Washington taking on Arizona State. Washington jumped out the gate this year. They had some pretty solid wins against Kent State, Portland State, and Michigan State and Stanford. But against UCLA, they got a bit of a reality check, and they gave up 31 points in the second and third quarter to lose 40-32. Michael Penix put up 345 yards with 4 scores and 2 picks. It just wasn't that good. Now, for Arizona State, they started the season okay. They had a blowout win against Northern Arizona, but then they hit the downside with losses to Oklahoma State, Eastern Michigan, and to Utah. Now, Saturday against USC, they were only down 21-17. They played pretty solid, but then USC started to pull away. They won 42-25. Emory Jones had a touchdown and a pick, 243 yards, while Xavier Holiday had 64 rushing yards in the score. Now, in this game, it's interesting. I think this really is a revenge game for Washington. Come off a loss, they're gonna, they still have to prove why is Washington ranked after that UCLA loss. They're gonna prove it here. I think Washington comes back and responds big time. I don't think Arizona's gonna have the same fight that they did against USC. I think this Washington team is for real. They're pretty solid, and I'm gonna take Washington in the average pick. Take half a point off, get them at minus 10 in this one. Next up, we have a game at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. It's Notre Dame here taking on BYU, who is 16th ranked. Notre Dame is 4-point favorites here. Now with BYU, they've won 6 of their last 9 non-home games. Jaron Allen has 12 touchdowns and a pick. Keanu Hill and Chase Robinson combined for 552 receiving yards and 5 TDs. And the BYU ground game is averaging 153 yards per contest. Now, defensively, BYU is allowing 26.4 points and 338 yards per game. Now, on the defensive end, Ben Bywater leads the team with 37 tackles. John Nelson has 2 sacks, and Max Tolley has 2 interceptions. Now, on the Notre Dame side, they've won 7 of the last 9 home games. This is technically a neutral site game, so I guess it wouldn't count as a home game. Drew Pine, ever since coming in for Tyler Buchner, has been pretty solid. He has completed 70% of his passes approximately, with 459 yards, 6 TDs, and a pick. Now, Michael Mayer and Lorenzo Styles, they combined for 454 receiving yards and 4 TDs, while Chris Tyree has 12 receptions. The Notre Dame ground game is averaging 160 yards per contest. Audric Esteem is leading the way with 264 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, defensively, Notre Dame is allowing 24 points per game. Now, Jack Kaiser, he leads the team with 26 tackles. Isaiah Foskey has 3 sacks, and Cam Hart has 3 pass deflections. Now, BYU is 2-5 in their last 7 neutral site games against the spread. while Notre Dame is 7-3. And the home team in the last 5 meetings is 4-1 against the spread. Guys, money pick BYU to win and to cover this game. Look, Notre Dame still isn't the real deal. When they played great against North Carolina, it was against one of the worst defenses in the country. They're not good. BYU is a ranked team for a reason. I think people forget that Baylor game where they showed up. I mean, BYU showed up against that Baylor team, and they're going to do the same against Notre Dame. Now, it's probably going to be a low-scoring game, but I know Jaron Hall and the offense is going to do enough to really push through the Notre Dame defense, and Notre Dame's offense is not that good, guys. Gotta call a spade a spade. They're not that good. They barely survived against California. They beat up on North Carolina because defensively they're good. Defensively they're good, so they can match North Carolina's offense, and North Carolina's defense is trash. But other than that, I'm taking BYU as a money pick here, guys. Give me BYU +4 money pick. Next up, we have Clemson heading to Boston College Alumni Field to take on the Eagles. Now, in this one, Clemson is -20.5. It's quite a few points, but it's against not that good of a Boston College team. Now, for this one, Clemson, they've been rolling through the year. Wins over Georgia Tech, Furman, and Louisiana Tech, and then they had a solid win against Wake Forest, and then another great win against NC State, where DJ Uiagalelei had 209 yards to score, while leading with 73 yards rushing. Now, Boston College, they've had some close ones. They beat Louisville recently against their backup quarterback. Phil Jurkovich had 304 yards, 3 scores, and a pick. Really, the question here is Clemson going to have a trap game on the road against Boston College? And for me, the answer is no, absolutely not. Boston College is going to be celebrating. They came off a huge win against Louisville. Now, Clemson, they have a big win too against NC State, and they may be celebrating that too, but their talent is going to prevail. Their defense is really good, and Phil Jurkovich is not going to do much against this defense. And Uiagalelei, he's going to do enough to put up at least 30 points on the board, and Boston College won't put much to cover. So here, guys, not too much science. I think the talent prevails for Clemson to blow out Boston College by 3 or more scores here. Boston College is not that good. Their crowd isn't much of an atmosphere at all. So here, I'm taking Clemson -20.5, and I'm making it an average pick. Next up, we have Kansas State taking on Iowa State, and what's a pretty good matchup. This is in Iowa State, and honestly, it's a tough one to call, in my opinion. Sorry, I'm almost giving it away before I pick it. Now, Kansas State is -2 on the spread. It's in Iowa State. Now, Kansas State has won 3 of their last 5 road games. Adrian Martinez has cleaned 62.2% of his passes for 654 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. Malik Knowles and Phillip Brooks have combined for 312 receiving yards, 312 receiving yards, while the running game is averaging 267 yards per contest. I mean, goodness. Kansas State's defense is only allowing 18.2 points per game. Austin Moore leads the team with 35 tackles. And they've been really rolling. They had a big win against Texas Tech after the win against Oklahoma. Now, Iowa State have won 7 of their last 9 home games. Hunter Decker's completing 70% of his passes. He does have 6 interceptions. That's a bit worrying. Now, Xavier Hutchinson, who is one of the best receivers in the country, and Jalen Nolan have combined for 757 receiving yards and 5 TDs. Now, the Iowa State running game, they're averaging 112 yards per contest, where Jarrell Brock leading the way. Now, the Wildcats of Kansas State are 11-5-1 against the spread in their last 17 on the road, while the Cyclones are 19-6-1 in their last 26 in October and 1-4 in their last 5 conference games against the spread. In this one, guys, I think Iowa State is going to respond after their tough loss to Kansas. The Iowa State at home really is a different breed. They're really solid. They play really well. Hunter Deckers and Xavier Hutchinson are a great combination. This is going to be a really close one. This is going to be tough to predict. I think Kansas State has a setback game finally after getting 2 solid wins here, guys. I'm going to take Iowa State here. Not much science. More, I like Hunter Deckers and Xavier Hutchinson, and I like Iowa State at home. Take Iowa State plus the 2. Make it an average pick. Next up, we have South Carolina taking on Kentucky. Kentucky is -10.5. Let me just fix this. And then scroll up. Yep, Kentucky again, 10.5 point favorites. Quite a bit at home, but is South Carolina that good? We really don't know. Now the Gamecocks, they've been okay this year. They've had a tough loss against Georgia, but they did have the blowout against FCS South Carolina State last time out, 50-10. Now Rattler hasn't been that good. He has 4 touchdowns and 7 picks. Marshawn Lloyd has 324 yards rushing, and Antoine Wells Jr. has 309 receiving yards. Now, defensively, Necker Armorai has a team high 32 total tackles, including 29 solo tackles, while Carolina's defense has 4 sacks and 7 interceptions. Now, Kentucky, they're going to look to respond from their loss to Ole Miss. It was a tough loss. They turned the ball over 3 times in Ole Miss territory late in the game. Now, Will Levis, he's thrown for 1,405 yards, 12 TDs, and 4 picks, while Kavosli Smoke has rushed for 269 yards this season. They got Chris Rodriguez back too. Tavion Robinson has a team high 24 catches for 365 receiving yards and 3 scores, while Barry and Brown and Dane Kay have combined for 551 yards. On defense, they're not too bad. They have 6 sacks and 4 interceptions this year. Now, South Carolina is 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 road games, while Kentucky is 6-1-1 in their last 8 games overall against the spread. And also, they're 19-5 and 2 against the spread against a team with a winning record. Now, really, in this game, I think it comes to, can Kentucky bounce back against this South Carolina team? And I think everything checks out to be yes. This Kentucky team is really talented. They're going to have something to prove after their loss. And they're going home in this one, guys. Guys, I'm going to make this an average pick because I think 10's a lot. 10.5's a lot. And I'm bringing it down to 10. Take the half point off. I'm taking Kentucky minus the 10, and I'm taking it as an average pick. I think this Kentucky team is really good. Next up, we have Washington State heading to USC to take on the Trojans. Now, USC's 13.5 point favorites. Now, Washington State opened up their season with a win against Idaho and a win against Wisconsin, and also beating Colorado State, but then they fell to Oregon 44-41. Now, against California, they had a 28-9 win. Cameron Ward had 343 yards, 3 scores, and 2 picks, while Renard Bell had 150 yards and a score. Now, on the USC side, they're still undefeated. They had a nice win against Arizona State. Arizona State kept it close for a bit, but USC ended up pulling out. Caleb Williams had 348 yards, 3 scores, and a pick, while Travis Dye led the team in rushing. In this game, guys, I like USC to win in the cover because I think their offense prevails in this one. I think there's nothing Washington State can do to really stop this offense. And also, I think USC's defense is going to first force a turnover or 2 off of what's his name? Cameron Ward, who's a great quarterback, but this USC defense is really good too. I think USC has all the tools to get a win against the spread. They've taken 2 losses against the spread now. Now they're more even out. That's due to happen. And I think in this one, this is the one where they pull out and get another blowout win here. They're at home. I think all the signs point towards USC winning here. I'm taking a minus 13.5, making a money pick. I really like USC in this one. Next one, we have Florida State. This is a primetime game. Florida State should almost be ranked, in my opinion. Traveling to NC State to take on NC State, who are minus 3.5 point favorites. Now, Florida State will try to bounce back from their loss against Wake Forest, their first loss, 31-21, taking them down to 4-1. Now, Jordan Travis, he has 1,226 yards, 8 touchdowns, and an interception. He's been really solid, while Trayshawn Ward has led the rushing game. Trey Benson and Lawrence Tafali have combined for 433 rushing yards and 6 TDs as well, while Johnny Wilson leads the FSU receiving group. Now, the Seminoles also have a pair of 200-yard-plus receivers and 3 more 100-plus yard receivers this season. Now, on defense, Jermaine Robinson had 34 tackles, where Jared Verse has 4 sacks. Now, for the Wolfpack of NC State, they'll be looking to rebound from their first loss against Clemson 30-20. Devin Leary had 10 touchdowns and 3 picks on the year. They have, I'm trying to pronounce this, Demai Sumo Karngibai. Sorry if I mispronounced that, who had 262 rushing yards and 3 TDs on the season. Thayer Thomas had 301 receiving yards in the season. Now on defense, Derek Pitts Jr., Drake Thomas have 32 tackles apiece, and Aiden White and Tyler Baker-Williams each have a pair of interceptions themselves. Now Florida State is 4-0 against the spread in their last 4 road games and 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 overall. Now NC State is 12-4 against the spread in their last 16 home games, while 7-0 against the spread in their last 7 following a loss. Well, the over is 4-1 in this one. Guys, I really like Florida State in this game at plus 3.5. I think this team is really talented, and on the road, these guys really do show out. I think this is a perfect game for for Jordan Travis to break out, and he's been really solid. Both teams are coming off tough losses, so it's kind of more even against that. Crest of Clemson and Wake Forest. But I think Florida State's going to be the better team in this one. And worst comes to worst, they lose by 3 points. I think NC State just does not have the talent to score points. I think Devin Leary in that offense is not that good, and their defense is going to have a really hard time stopping Jordan Travis. So in this one, guys, I'm taking Florida State as an average pick. I'm taking them at plus 3.5. Next up, and this will be the last game I will be talking about, it's Texas A&M traveling to Alabama to take on the Crimson Tide, who are 24-point favorites. Now, Texas A&M has lost their last 3 road games. Max Johnson hasn't been doing much. He has 517 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now, they do have Aniyah Smith and Evan Stewart, who have combined for 488 receiving yards. Their ground game has been averaging 130.4 yards per contest, with Devon Achane leading the way with 466 yards and 3 TDs. Now, defensively, they're really solid. They've only been allowing 17.8 points per game, with Antonio Johnson leading the way with 46 tackles, Chris Russell Jr. with 1.5 sacks, and also Jordan Gilbert has an interception. Now, Alabama hasn't lost a home game since November of 2019. Bryce Young is completing 67.2% of his passes for 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and also 1,202 yards. They have Trayshawn Holden and Kobe Prentice in the receiving game, with also Jahmyr Gibbs. Their ground game is averaging 251 yards per game, with Gibbs leading the way. Defensively, they're allowing only 11 points a game. I mean, against Arkansas, they didn't have the greatest of games, but they're still pretty solid. Will Anderson has 5 sacks, and Kool-Aid McKinstry, that's actually the name. It's like Ho You Fat, you know what I mean? Has 7 pass deflections. Now, Texas A&M is 6-2 against the spread against the team with a winning record, while they're 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 road games, and Alabama 17-5 against the spread in their last 22 home games. In this one, this is tough to call because we have to check the status of Bryce Young, simply put. If Bryce Young is playing, I'm taking Alabama likely, but not by much, because I think Texas A&M is still a solid defensive team that can hold Bryce Young in that offense to not as much yards, kind of like what Texas did. But to me, I'm going to avoid this game because I do not trust Texas A&M to save my life. I'm taking Alabama minus 24 as an avoid pick. We got to see what the status of Bryce Young is, and I really don't trust this Texas A&M defense whatsoever. So, guys, let's take a look at the recap. Let's take a look at all our picks. So, starting with the avoid picks, we have Purdue plus 3, Tennessee minus the 3. My apologies. I forgot to say that was an avoid pick. Vanderbilt plus 18.5 and Alabama minus 24. In our average picks, we have Iowa. I like Iowa plus the 4 against Illinois. I didn't mention the game. Stanford plus 7. I really like them in their game against Oregon State. Georgia minus 29. Oklahoma State minus 9.5, Ohio State minus 25.5, Washington minus 10, Clemson minus 20.5, Iowa State plus 2, Kentucky minus 10, Florida State plus 3.5, Kansas plus 7, and Utah minus 4. In my money picks, I like Boise State minus 6.5, BYU plus 4, Michigan minus 21, Wisconsin minus 9.5, USC minus 13.5, and I like Wake Forest against Army minus 17. I think they're going to have a really good game. They're going to throw the lights out of Army. So, guys, if you like what you saw, of course, the picks will be up there. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. This is SAG with College Football Spread Talk. Let's keep the winning going. We're finally at a positive record. 16-14-2 in money picks. Let's keep it going.